Let's look at a cell. Every living organism is made up of cells. So, usually, or basically what you can say is that a cell is the basic unit of life. Every organism that lives on the surface of Earth has a cell or is made up of cells. I'm saying has a cell because we can have a unicellular organism that is the most basic, that is like just one cell or a single cell. So if you're looking at a cell just as it, we have said that it is the basic unit of life. So some organisms actually, which are unicellular, are just one cell. Some of those organisms like the amoeba, you've seen that is just a single cell. And then we have multicellular, multiple. Multicellular is multiple, multicellular. Multicellular comes from the word multiple. This one has multiple cells. That is the likes of we, human beings, cows, goats, like that. Remember this one, we have amoeba, we have paramecium, those single-celled organisms. How do cells originate? Usually one cell, which we call the parent cell, gives birth to other cells, which we call the daughter cells. At any given time, that is called cell division. Every cell has a capacity to divide. You'll look at the details of cell division when you proceed with these videos ahead. Let's look at something particular about cells. Each cell, whether it is a plant cell or an animal cell, note that these are different cells actually. A plant cell is different from an animal cell. Has something called organelles, cell organelles. Organelles. Every cell has constituents called organelles, and these organelles have different functions in a cell. Some of them, just to list, we are going to have each. I will not list them here. In case there's something you have not captured, you can always rewind the video and go through it, so there is no need possibility. But then you have a cell membrane. Every cell has a cell membrane. What a cell membrane does is that it is a semi-permeable structure that encloses the inner or the protoplasm of the cell. Other inner organelles are enclosed within the cell membrane. And then we have cell walls. Cell walls are strictly for plant cells. Animal cells do not have cell walls. And then we have the nucleus. Nucleus, as you can see in the image, is that it is the control. It is the main. Okay, pardon that. A nucleus controls all the activities of the cell. The nucleus controls all the activities of a cell. And then it is important. It initiates cell division in a cell. Of course, cell division is one of the activities that a cell does. And then it plays an important role in protein synthesis. All the protein synthesis starts from the nucleus of a cell. And then, of course, storing the genetic information. Now, all that shows you that the nucleus is actually the most important thing that drives cell activities. And then we have the cell vacuole. Remember, both the plant and the animal cells have the nucleus. Now, the cell vacuole, this one stores substances or molecules or materials within the cell. It is so pronounced in the plant cell. You see the subvacuole, it stores actually water and the solutions. And then is a temporary food store. Actually, the vacuole is a temporary food store. This is the spelling of a vacuole, like you can see in the drawing. And then we have the chloroplast. Every cell that undergoes autotrophism or photosynthesis, or a cell that makes its own food, a photosynthetic cell, always has organisms, organelles that help in manufacturing or trapping the sunlight. That is now, the chloroplast contains something we call chlorophyll. Chlorophyll. That is chlorophyll. So every chloroplast contains chlorophyll, and it is this chlorophyll that traps the sunlight energy that is used for photosynthesis. Every green plant contains that and photosynthesizes. We have the lysosomes. These ones contain enzymes, hydrolytic enzymes that can break down the cells, or it can digest materials. And then the Golgi bodies, these are involved in cell secretions. Let's compare the animal and plant cell briefly. If you're comparing an animal and plant cell, remember we said that if you're making any comparison, you have to tabulate in that form so that you have contrasting differences or contrasting comparisons when you're making. So a plant cell, since it has a cell wall, it should always have a regular shape. This one does not have a regular shape because it's just a cell membrane. It doesn't have the rigid cell wall. And then we have the irregularity of the cell will be a difference. This one being regular. And then this one having no cell wall and this one having a cell wall is another difference. And then this one having a large vacuole, this one having small vacuole, that is another difference. Middle lamella, this one has no middle lamella. And then the tonoplast. The plant cell has a tonoplast, the animal cell does not have a tonoplast. And then we also have storage of food, such as starch granules. The plant cell stores food in form of starch granules. The animal cell stores food in form of glycogen and fat droplets. And then usually a plant cell has a thin layer of cytoplasm, and an animal cell has a lot of cytoplasm. There are so many similarities. These are differences, but there are so many similarities that you can also look at. Actually, to look at the similarities, you have to just go to the beginning part. Many of those organelles are in both the cells. Then there are what we call specialized cells. This is just cells in general, but then we have specialized cells. This means that cells that perform strictly certain functions in the body, they don't perform any other function. They just have specialized function. And just to go through some of them, we have red blood cells. These strictly are blood cells that carry oxygen in the body. We have sperm cells. This one are strictly in reproduction. These are gametes. The sperm cell fertilizes the ovum. So they are only for reproduction. The ovum is the one in females, and then the sperms are the ones in males. Then you have white blood cells specialized for fighting any invading microorganisms in the body. They fight diseases. We have platelets only used for blood clotting. They aid in blood clotting. And then you see that especially, we have been looking at the animals, but then in plants, we have root hair cells. These ones are important in absorption of water from the soil. We have the palisade cells, the gut cells. You can always look at that. Let's look at levels of organization. Levels of organization. Now, in levels of organization, we have already looked at a cell. Now, if we have a beginning or the start point as a cell, that means if we have different cells, we are going to form a tissue. Different cells performing the same function. We're going to have a tissue. Let's say many cells that are involved in a muscle contraction. You're going to have a muscle tissue. And then let's look at that from tissue. If you have several tissues performing the same function, you're going to have an organ. You're going to have an organ. Then if you have several organs, like say we have the pancreas is an organ, we have the liver as an organ, and so forth, you're going to form an organ system. And that organ system can be, this can be, let's say, digestive system. Or if we're looking at the central nervous system, let's look at, you have the brain, you have the nerves, you have the spinal cord, so you're going to have a nervous system. And then, if you're having several organ systems, like you have the nervous system, you have the digestive system, you have the musculoskeletal system, you discover that you have an organism. You'll have an organism, and all of us are organisms. We are living organisms. That is basically on a multicellular organism. So we have several organs, like I've said. You can actually name any of these. You can always go and then you find out how many organs you have in the body, how many tissues you have in the body. Let's say you have, for example, this is in the tissue, let's say you have blood, and in that blood there are actually cells forming that, like red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, they form blood, which is a tissue. Then the blood will come, you form the heart, which is an organ, that part of that. Then the organ system will now be the circulatory system. That means the heart and the blood, and the group of cells, you have the same organ system. And that one will be in an organism, and that is complete. You can look at that. You can try for nervous system, you can try for shoot system and the root system. Then organisms are collection of organ systems and behavior. So we are